Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are putting together a full explainer to unpack a seriously fascinating philosophical concept called Übermodernism, leaning on some brilliant insights from the Nietzsche podcast. Look, if you're completely exhausted by the endless circular debates in our culture right now, you are in the exact right place for a fresh and, frankly, a really powerful perspective.
Let's kick things off with a slightly provocative question. Where did all our modern problems actually begin? Whenever we start arguing about today's cultural or political messes, why do we instantly try to find that one historical villain who started the whole thing? We're constantly looking backward, right? Trying to find that single thread to unravel. But as we're going to see today, human history is just way too complex for that kind of simple narrative.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to cover 1. The historical blame game. 2. The string of pearls. 3. The myth of objective truth. 4. Inventing the modern age. And 5. Enter Ubermodernism. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The historical blame game. Why we point fingers at the past.
You've probably noticed this pattern, right? It doesn't matter if you're on the left, the right, or somewhere in the center. Everyone uses these historical genealogies to validate their current arguments by blaming specific thinkers from the past. Like, some people will blame Karl Marx or the postmodernists for modern relativism. Meanwhile, right-wing traditionalists will often point the finger directly at Rousseau. Objectivists blame Immanuel Kant for putting limits on human reason, and the philosopher Karl Popper, he went all the way back to ancient Greece to blame Plato. We absolutely love to pinpoint exactly where it all went wrong, but honestly, doing this reveals a whole lot more about our current political anxieties than it does about actual history.
Section 2. The string of pearls. Deconstructing the genealogical fallacy.
Friedrich Nietzsche completely pulls the rug out from under this blame game. The string of pearls idea perfectly highlights a trap we all fall into. We desperately want history to be this neat, tidy chain of cause and effect. It's a linear fallacy. We imagine one philosopher neatly handing a baton to the next right down the line until it lands in our modern lap. But reality, it's much more like a chaotic tornado. Real history is incredibly messy. It's full of parallel lines of development. And more importantly, it's driven by the subjugation and repurposing of older ideas. Our linear view of history is almost never a factual lineage. It's really just a chaotic projection of whatever narrative we need to justify ourselves right now in the present moment.
This crucial point is captured so perfectly in a quote from Nietzsche's Genealogy of Morality. He writes, "The eye was made to see, the hand was made to grasp, but all ends and all utilities are only signs that a will to power has mastered a less powerful force." What he's telling us here is pretty radical. You absolutely cannot understand the origin of a thing simply by looking at its current function. Just because an idea is being used today to fuel a specific political argument doesn't mean it was originally created for that purpose. We've just mastered it and we've bent it to our modern will.
Section 3. The myth of objective truth. Truth as a perspective.
We tend to walk around falsely believing our historical narratives are what the Greeks called episteme, pure, dispassionate, objective facts. We love to think we're just stating the objective truth of history. But in reality, language and history are usually doxa. That means rhetoric or opinion that's meant to control views and shape reality. When we craft a historical lineage to prove our modern political point, we aren't delivering episteme. We are utilizing doxa to sway opinions and win our arguments.
And that brings us right to Nietzsche's most famous concept, the will to power. This is the psychological drive to interpret, value, and subjugate ideas to fit our current needs and overcome resistance. It reveals that our so-called truths and objective analyses are actually driven by deeply ingrained psychological evaluations. It's the needs of the triumphant impulse inside of us that seizes upon logic and history, using them as weapons to validate what we already desperately want to be true. It turns out, reason isn't really in charge at all. The will to power is.
Section 4. Inventing the modern age, the rhetorical roots of modernity.
Tracing this history, the irony is just, well, it's off the charts. The whole idea of a progressive, scientific, modern era was literally invented out of pure rhetorical and political utility. Back in the 1300s, Petrarch essentially invented the term Dark Ages out of pure Italian patriotism because he wanted to harken back to the glory of Rome. Fast forward to the 1700s, and Rousseau was actually the first to use the term modernist. And get this, he used it as an insult, a pejorative slur against materialists. Then, by the 1900s, we had somehow mistakenly assumed modernism was this objective, pure era of scientific progress. The very era we live in is just a rhetorical invention.
If you take away one thing, make it this. Periodizing history,
is a projection of our present needs. We divide history up into these neat little ages, the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, modernity, not because those boundaries are objectively scientifically true, but because drawing those lines serves our current moral and political desires. We tell a story about where we came from, purely to justify exactly where we want to go.
Finally, Section 5. Enter Übermodernism, overcoming the modern condition.
So Ubermodernism, which literally means what is over and above modernism, demands that we completely drop the petty politics of the present. This petty politics is what most of us engage in every single day. It's reactive, it's rooted in resentment, it's obsessed with present-day squabbles, and it's constantly searching for a historical scapegoat to somehow own the other side. Ubermodernism demands we elevate to what's called great politics. This is an affirmative philosophy. It doesn't care about a temporary election cycle. It aims at the destiny and the health of the human species over timelines of thousands of years.
To truly overcome the weariness and the decadence of our time, we've got to actively construct this healthier, uber-modern perspective. And here is how we do it. First, recognize that historical narratives serve present agendas. When someone sells you a neat, tidy history of why everything is ruined today, recognize that as their will to power. Second, stop looping in reactive resentment. Do not define your entire worldview by the enemy you're fighting against. And third, actively create life-affirming values for the future. You have to ask yourself, are the beliefs you hold making you stronger, or are they just exhausting you?
I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. Are your beliefs rooted in the grievances of the present, or are you building an uber-modern future? Are you going to stay stuck in the blame game, endlessly looking backward for someone to accuse, or will you dare to build something new, affirmative, and oriented toward an unimaginably great future? The choice is absolutely yours. Thanks for exploring this with me, and keep questioning those narratives.